Well, thank you all so much for coming today. I wanted to provide this presentation on the announcements that came out by the Biden administration. But before we get started, I wanted to make sure that you know who you're talking to today. I'm from Alliance San Diego, and we are a community-based organization that builds coalitions to promote justice and social change. And our mission is to build collective power to create an inclusive democracy, which really includes everybody that's on this call. And one of the goals for our department in particular is to make sure that we are bringing people down a spectrum from undocumented to documented to lawful permanent resident to citizen to engaged leader in our community. Because we have an envision that if everybody is involved, we can have a more inclusive democracy where everybody can fulfill their full potential in an environment of harmony, safety, equality, and justice. And so these are the core values where we decide on what work we're going to work on. Where everything comes from a place of inclusion, compassion, justice, collaboration, and integrity. And today you're meeting with the Legal Rights Department. I'm Michelle Solari. I am the director of the department and the immigration attorney on staff. I have my colleague Yolanda here with me today, who will be monitoring the Q&A and chat. So if you have any questions, you can feel free to put it in the chat. But Yolanda is our organizer and Department of Justice accredited representative. We also have Andrea Totopale, who's another Department of Justice partially accredited representative. And our manager, Hector Oviedo, is a fully accredited Department of Justice accredited representative. And what that means is that even though they are not attorneys, they've undergone extensive training to be able to help people through the immigration process, and they are certified to do so under the Department of Justice. So what our department does is we do education and outreach. We provide webinars like today and presentations on things like naturalization, immigration updates like today's is, and know your rights. And we also provide in-house legal services, which includes consultations, naturalization, DACA, green card renewals, TPS, and more. And we will be launching some more workshops to help people and like large groups of people with their immigration processes. So I wanted to give you kind of a rundown what you can expect from today. So we know that there were two different programs that were announced by the president on Tuesday. So I want to go through and say, what are each of those programs? What does the process look like for each of those programs? What can you do now? Are there other things that you should think about and prepare for? And what can you expect from Alliance San Diego as this program rolls out? So let's start with the announcements. So there was two separate announcements that came out by the Biden administration. The first one has gotten a lot of attention, and that one is the undocumented, it will allow undocumented immigrants who are married to US citizens be eligible for something called parole in place. The reason why this is the headliner is that it'll affect 500,000 individuals nationwide and an estimated 30,000 people locally here in San Diego. So it's a really big program. And the other program it was announced was for DACA recipients and dreamers who are too young to qualify for DACA. They'll be eligible for something called a D3 waiver. And I'll break down all of it as we go through. But I do want to make sure it's super clear that these programs have not taken effect yet. And for today, we're trying to get out as much information that is known at the moment. So let's talk about this parole in place for spouses of US citizens and their children. So what is parole in place? So they announced this big program, parole in place, and it's a term of art that we already have in existence right now for military families. But what this program does is it allows an individual who entered the United States undocumented to be able to adjust their status down the road. And so what we're saying is that even though you entered without proper documentation, and generally speaking, you wouldn't be able to get a green card in the United States, we're essentially going to pretend like you entered with status. And with that, we're going to provide you 3 years of protection from deportation, 3 years of work authorization, and it will make you eligible to apply for lawful permanent residency status inside the United States without having to leave. And this is really big news. Right now, individuals can apply for their spouses, but they have to leave the country. And so we'll go into a little bit more detail as to what that process looks like in just a second, but I want to make sure that um, everybody understands like that this is something that is going to come down the road, and it's really, really going to benefit our community here locally. And so the who qualifies for the new program, so they are specific requirements. They have to be physically present in the United States on June 17th, 2024 without admission or parole. So that means that they entered the United States without documents when they first came in, and they were physically present on that date. And I know it sounds weird that they had to enter without documents to qualify for the program, but that's really because if they entered with documents, they already qualified for lawful permanent residency status through their U.S. citizen spouses. So it's not like it's excluding people, it's just including a whole other group of people. They have to be married to a U.S. citizen on June 17th, 2024. So that means if you got married on June 18th, you're not going to qualify for this program. So they had to be actually married on that specific day. And so that's really important as we're starting to think about what types of documents are going to be required as the program rolls out. They also have to have lived in the United States for 10 years or more. They can't pose a threat to public safety or national security. And these are really looking at terrorist type bars and uh, more extreme types of national security. With the public safety, it can be some types of crimes, but we don't know exactly what crimes will be included that could exclude somebody from the program just yet. And they have to be otherwise eligible for adjustment of status. So the Parole in Place program looks like it's going to be waiving the individual's unlawful entry into the United States, but it's unclear what's going to happen otherwise. So they have to be eligible for adjustment of status and meet all the other criteria to apply for a green card outside of that um, outside of that unlawful entry. And they have to merit a favorable exercise of discretion. They put this on everything that they come out with, but if you meet the criteria, you will qualify for the exercise of discretion. And so, more so, when that comes into play is that there might be some criminal activity in there. That's where we're going to see the exercise of discretion. But if you have a clean record and you meet the criteria, you will be eligible for the program. So why is parole in place needed? As I touched on before, an individual who is married to a U.S. citizen and entered the United States without documents would be, right now, they're required to go to the consulate abroad to apply for their green card. The problem is that the day that somebody leaves the United States, there's a 10-year bar from them ever coming back into the United States. And so right now you can apply for a waiver, and there are stateside waivers, meaning that you could apply for that waiver inside of the United States, get it approved, and then travel to your interview. But you're still going to need to go through that extra process. You're still going to need to travel abroad and go to the interview. And if anything comes up at that interview, you could risk being stuck abroad, separated from your family after spending all of that money. And so that's what it looks like right now without this program. And so once it takes effect, individuals can apply inside the United States without running all of those risks and spending all of that money. So I wanted to break down what you can expect right now because we just heard this announcement and it's really unclear what's going to be happening. So we heard the announcement on June 18th, and now it's going to go through the regulatory process. After the regulatory process is completed, it's usually about 60 days. Then the program will take effect. People can apply for advanced parole. But we don't know when that's going to happen. We don't know when it's going to be approved, and we don't know when you're going to be able to apply for your green card. But as soon as you do get that parole in place, you can apply for your green card thereafter. But there's still a lot of unknowns at this point. And so I touched on the regulatory process, and they are starting the regulatory process. I know a lot of people want the program to start today, But going through the regulatory process is actually a really good thing. What that means is that they write out the program. They say what are the requirements, what forms are going to be filled out, how much is it going to cost, what are the decision makers, what are the factors that are going to be looked at. So when you apply, you know exactly what you're applying for. But also, when you have a program that's gone through the regulatory process, that means that people had the time to add their comments, their thoughts, their feedback, and and then there was time to review all of that before finalizing the program, which means that the next administration can't come into office and get rid of the program on the next day. It would create a lasting program, and they would have to go through a lot of legal hoops to get rid of the program once it takes effect. The regulations take approximately 60 days. So just wait a little bit. We're expecting the end of August for this program to take fruition. So don't apply now. If you apply now, you will be rejected and will wasted a lot of time and money putting it together. So I want to touch on the expedited D3 waiver for DACA and Dreamers. This is a more like it doesn't have as large of an impact, but it does affect many community members and it's a little bit more nuanced. So I want to make sure that I explain what that is. So when we were talking about family members applying for a waiver abroad, that was for their green card. That was, and those waivers are 601 waivers. A D3 waiver, it forgives, it's like a forgiveness for different kinds of violations that might prevent somebody from getting a non-immigrant visa. And so they call it the D3 waiver because it comes from the Immigration and Nationality Act, Section 212D3. That's the only reason why they call it that. And people love using acronyms. So there you go. That's where it comes from. And so it will be for those non-immigrant visas. It's already in effect. The D3 waivers already exist. And so I'll go a little bit more in depth about what the change is in the future. But right now, D1 212D3 waivers are purely discretionary. So all of this is at the hands of the officer. Um, so the announcement means that it's going to be a streamlined process for certain individuals to request the waiver. So they haven't talked about what streamline means, what the process is going to be to ensure that the individual gets the waiver. But this is what we do know. So officers will have guidelines on who will qualify for a D3 waiver. With those guidelines, they should be followed. So it's going to create more certainty for individuals who are applying for their waiver and for their employers who are trying to petition them to get a non-immigrant visa, work visa to work for their company. And then once they come into the United States, it opens up the doors for an employer to sponsor them for lawful permanent residency down the road. And so I know that's a little bit more nuanced, but I want to make sure I answer any questions. If you have any, please chime in and I'll answer your questions. Um, but not everybody's eligible for this more streamlined waiver. Those that are eligible are DACA recipients and dreamers without DACA. And that part is really exciting. As we know, individuals couldn't apply for DACA after 2017. So the program has been closed for new applicants for 7 years now. And so all those students that were graduating from high school, going to college, getting their education, they were not eligible for DACA, but they will be eligible for this waiver. And so to qualify, you have to have graduated from a U.S. institution of higher education. It has to be an accredited institution. Most of them are, but you just want to double check that you did graduate from an accredited institution. And you have to have an offer of employment from a U.S. employer in a field related to your degree. So that part is really important because it has to be related to what you graduated in. And so since this waiver is a little bit more complicated, I did want to break down kind of what this processes look like. So generally the employer will petition for an applicant to work for them. So they say, I would like Juan to come work for my company. and they submit an application for that. If it gets approved, which is the next step, when it gets approved, then the individual has to fill out an online form for the consulate and a petition for the non-immigrant waiver or the non-immigrant visa. It's unclear when the waiver is going to come in. Right now, it's generally at the interview, but we don't know if we're going to get it at the DS 160 phase when they're applying for the non immigrant visa, or if it's going to happen at the interview, or how long that's going to take. Right now, the D3 waivers can take months, years. And so, with this certainty and with this timeline in place, it'll make it a lot easier for individuals to get this work authorization or this non-immigrant work visa. So they attend their interview at the consulate and then they enter the United States with their new visa. And I have a big question mark at the end because what happens next, right? So an individual comes back in the United States, they get a work visa for 3 years, 2 years, maybe up to 6 years. What are they going to do after that? Now they have a lawful entry, so they could potentially get married and get a green card that way. They could have an employer that wants to petition for them to get their green card, but the employer has to want to go through that process with them. But it is also possible that their work visa runs out and then they don't have a next step. And so it's a big question in my mind when looking at this process. So here's some things that I think people should consider and things that they can do right now. So think about what program best suits their goals. I wanted to start off with advanced parole. I know it's not a new program, and that's exactly why I want to start off with it. Advanced parole allows DACA recipients to travel for humanitarian reasons, for educational reasons, for business purposes, and they can travel abroad for that reason and be let back into the United States, and it's a lawful entry. That program exists now, and so if you qualify to travel now, you can apply for it now, travel, come back, and adjust status through your spouse or through your U.S. citizen child over the age of 21. So it can be more inclusive. It can include relationships that develop down the road. And so I want to make sure that we're also talking about programs that are already in place that help people. The Parole in Place program might be the best avenue for individuals if they're married to a U.S. citizen. Um, they're here in the United States. Maybe they don't have DACA. They don't have any. They're not able to go on advanced parole for whatever reason. That might be the perfect program for them. The thing that I would say is it's a future program, and we don't know when it's going to start, and we don't know if there's going to be litigation that comes out or people trying to fight the legality of the program. And so I always want to talk about things that are sure things first. Um, and then lastly is the expedited D3 waiver, which is the ability to apply for non-immigrant visas. So this opens the doors for you to get work authorization through the non-immigrant visa and have that pathway for an employer to sponsor you down the road. The other two aren't opening up those pathways for employers generally. Parole in place, definitely not, and then advanced parole and limited occasions it would. Um, and then, and so those are the big things, but like the expedited D3 waiver, you have to leave the United States. So if you do have that spouse that can petition for you, that might be the better option for you. So we know these programs don't exist, but there are some things that you can do right now to prepare for when it does come into existence. So start gathering your documents. We know that you had to prove that you were present on June 18th, 2024. Go through your documents and find a document that says that you were physically present on that day. We know from when DACA came out that they will ask for something that proves that you're present on that specific day. So it wasn't that long ago. See if you can't find something that shows that you were present that day or the day before and the day after, because that's going to be really important. They're also going to want documents that prove that you've been in the United States for the last 10 years. And that can be hard to come by. That could be you know, your phone bills, that could be your rent, your rental agreements, that could be your car insurance. bank statements, uh, your school records. It could be any of those things. However, I know that lots of times when you're undocumented, you do everything you can to make sure that there's no documents in your name. And so sometimes you have to be a little bit more creative as to what that looks like. So it might be your children's school documents with you being the parent of record on those school documents. It could be records from the hospital for you or for your child saying that you were there with your child for those documents or for those visits. And so things like that could be really important. You want to make sure that you have some sort of identity document. So that would be either your passport from your home country. It could be a consular card, but something that shows who you are, so that we can identify you as an individual. If you're for the Parole in Place program, you have to prove that you are married. So that you're going to need a copy of your marriage certificate showing that you were married prior to um, June 17th, 2024. And so you want to have that. And then if you've ever been divorced, you're going to probably need your divorce decrees and then new marriage certificates. And so there's going to be some documents there. And then also your immigration files. If you've had any encounters with immigration, you would want to have that as well. And then you want to prepare for an immigration consultation with an attorney or Department of Justice accredited representative. And for us to make a good determination on whether or not you qualify for the program, we're going to need to know your entries into the United States, any past petitions, all your immigration court history. If you have an A number, that's the number that's given to you if you ever applied for a visa, if you've ever been placed in removal proceedings, if you've ever been apprehended by immigration, that's going to be the number that you're given. We're going to want to know about every contact with immigration officials, contact with the police, employment and address history, most likely for the last 10 years. Um, and so all those things are going to come into play into us being able to determine whether or not this is going to be a program that works for you. And so since you do have time, and if you don't have these documents, this is the time to go get those documents. You can go to the court and get any of your criminal documents. If you don't have anything from immigration, you can ask for a Freedom of Information Act request now. They take about 2 to 3 months to get, so then you'll have those ready to go. And this, I can't stress this enough. You, there's going to be a lot of fraud happening right now. When a new program comes out, it's always the case that people are going to want to take advantage of the new program and tell people that they can help with the program and they can help them right now. But please, please, please don't pay anybody to help you expedite your case or anybody that says that they can do your case right now. The program is not in effect. And like I mentioned before, there could be a lawsuit stopping this program from taking effect. Like that is a possibility. I think this program has a very strong legal grounding, but we want to make sure that you are the most protected as possible. And so when you're working with somebody, you want to check their credentials. You can always check them on calbar.ca.gov for if they're a California licensed attorney. However, immigration is federal law, so the individual can be licensed in any state and still practice law. And each bar will have their own website depending on what state that they were licensed in. But you can ask your attorney. If you ask me if you can see my credentials, I would happily pull my credentials up on the bar website or show you my bar card. And the reason is that I'm here to help the community. And if and you need to trust that I'm going to be doing a good job and I have your best interests at heart. And I am happy that you are taking care of yourself because that is the most important thing in this process. These processes are to help you be in a more secure place. And it's about you and it's not about us as the attorney. And so make sure you have that extra assurance. This justice.gov/EOIR. This is important because all of the nonprofits have Department of Justice accredited representatives, and all of them have to be registered on this website. So if you go to this website, you will find Alliance San Diego, and you'll find Hector Oviedo, Andrea Tepoyo Totopale, and Yolanda Villa. And so there's no questions whether or not they have the proper accreditation to help you. And you can check for past disciplinary actions. You want to identify their area of expertise. You don't want somebody that dabbles in immigration. Immigration is very complicated, it changes all the time. So you want to make sure that you are finding somebody to help you that specializes in immigration. You want to get a written contract, and you want to keep copies of absolutely everything that somebody submits on your behalf. Okay. And now I want to talk to you about what you can expect from us. I know that there's a lot of moving parts right now, but we are here to guide you through this process. So this week, you can expect from us a recording of the webinar with all the information. You'll get it in English and in Spanish in case the person that you want to share it with does not speak Spanish. You'll have access to both. We'll also be providing one-page summaries of the programs in English and in Spanish so that you have one-page document that you can read and you don't have to listen to me talk for, for 30 minutes. And then as updates come up, everybody that registered for this program or are on our listserv, we will be emailing out updates as they come out. And then once they do come out, we're here to provide assistance. We'll be launching a huge workshop series where we'll host free immigration screenings for the Parole in Place program. We will be reviewing all of the documents and making sure that you do have the proper documentation to prove your residence here in the last 10 years, or your presence in the last 10 years, that you're physically present on June 18th, 2024, and that all your documents are in order. We will help you fill out the form, and then we will help you send it out. And so we will be doing that in a workshop fashion where individuals will be representing themselves, but we will make sure that you have a clean cut case and that there won't be any issues arising in your case. And so here are a couple things that I hope you leave this presentation knowing. First, don't pay anybody to help you with this program yet until there's an official announcement that should come at the end of summer. Get screened by an immigration attorney or DOJ accredited representative to make sure that you truly qualify. Just because you meet those criteria doesn't mean that there's not something else in your immigration history that could prevent you from getting the benefit in the end, right? So just because you've been here for 10 years and married to a U.S. citizen doesn't mean that there's not other things in your immigration or criminal history that could prevent you from getting your parole in place. So we want to make sure we properly screen you for it. You can start gathering your documents now so that you're prepared for when it takes effect. And then also just stay in touch for more information. Like we have our Instagram, our Twitter account, or X now. And then also if you wanted to volunteer or you know somebody else that would love to volunteer for this program, we would be so happy to have people come join us. The truth is that this is going to be a community effort. It's going to take a lot of people to come together to make sure that everybody has what they need for this process. And so please feel free to go to our Bitly account, and then you'll be signed up with different ways to volunteer for this program or other programs at Alliance San Diego. With that, I'd love to say thank you so much for your time, for coming here today, and I'm happy to answer any questions that people may have.